Are you tired of self-doubt holding you back? Have you ever wished you could have the confidence to face your fears, go after your wildest dreams, and the tools necessary to live your best life? Hey there, amazing listeners. I'm your host and author of How to Grasp Confidence and Own Your Power. And I've made it my mission to help you break free from self-doubt and embrace confidence. Subscribe now and join us as we unlock the secrets to unshakable self-assurance. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into our show today. This is an exciting show. We're going to be talking about storytelling with confidence. And who better to join me on storytelling with confidence other than Doug Thompson? Doug is a TEDx speaker, international best-selling co-author, chief education architect, and top LinkedIn voice for storytelling. Together, we're going to explore the art of storytelling and how it relates to thought leadership, amplifies your influence, and builds confidence. Doug, thanks for coming to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I was really digging that music there. That seems like some of the stuff I meditate to, some of that 528 megahertz or something. It was really great.
Yeah, it's calming, right? Which is
like
good
it.
for a show. I watched your TED Talk, and I love how you share a story. It's so authentic. It's approachable. It's calming, right? It's inviting almost. And I think that's some of the hallmarks of a really good storyteller. They set people at ease. They share authentically and openly. And they give people a lens of what it's kind of like to view life from their perspective. How did you get started in this whole storytelling journey?
Yeah, I wish I could point to a single incident that did that. I just a little funny anecdote. I went back to a high school reunion. It's 40 plus years I've been out of high school, but they had memorabilia laying around from high school, and they had this excuse slip. So this was back in the days before computers, and thank goodness they didn't have social media because I'd have totally been busted on this. But it was a tardy slip that said, I was late because a Coke truck dropped all its Cokes on the freeway and I couldn't get by. And it was approved. So I was a storyteller for a long time.
No, you're kidding me.
No, I've got a picture of it. It's really pretty cool. When I saw that, I said, wow, okay, this goes way back. But it wasn't, I sort of unconsciously realized I had this capability. I developed it over time in my different roles. I started out as a copier technician, so when I'd have to explain a problem to a customer, I'd have to put it and frame it in language they would understand. I couldn't say this solenoid that activated this switch to that would just, so I have to come up and start telling those things. And over the years, as technology got more complicated, I got in that, I was able to sort of, again, keep using that skill to go do it. But it wasn't until we were interviewing somebody, this was back when I was at Microsoft, interviewing somebody for a similar role to mine, that we'd gone through like 20 people, and my manager said, look, they're all smart, but they can't tell a story like you do. And I was unconscious that I had that ability to do it. I thought everybody could do it. It's one of those things where you get good at it and you just forget that not everybody has that capability. So that's where it came about. So from that point on, I said, okay, how can I help other people get in touch with their inner storyteller? And that's where, the TED Talk came out of a bucket list type thing. I said, look, if I'm going to be a speaker and I want to do these other things, let's jump in. How the TED experience of that, it is an experience. It's different than getting on a stage and just talking to people. But I said, look, let me go do this. And, that story goes from there.
That's so interesting. And this relates back to confidence because, during your TED Talk, when you were on stage, you talked about kind of silencing that inner bully that I feel like we all have. You call it an inner bully. You have a name for your inner bully. I think that's really cool. Whatever mechanism that you want to have to identify it, so that you know that it's not real, right? I think that's really important. But you're really smart. You've had an amazing career. You're successful at everything you've touched, literally. But you still have an inner bully.
Yeah, to be transparent, it's your subconscious, right? Your subconscious is doing what it's supposed to do to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times it's in trying to protect you, it sort of finds every reason not to go do something. Mm-hmm. Right? There's no more bears to run from or saber-toothed tigers or anything. So we have to invent these big danger things that we got to save our life from standing on a stage or telling our story. But it's in there. It's a constant thing that goes on. And in my TED Talk, I go through and I learned this, a lot of brain science when I was putting together the TED Talk of why do we have this? What went on? Because it got in my big time. I signed up and I stalked and I sold myself to get this TED Talk and I got it. And I said, oh crap, now I got to do it. It's easy.
The reality sinks in.
Get up there and do this thing. And so as I was going through it, I actually changed a little bit of the talk to focus on that inner dialogue that goes on. And I gave mine a name because I find if I give a name to something, if I name it, it's a little bit easier for me to deal with it than something just say, I know there's just something not quite right. Somebody's little inner voice is telling me, run away. And so, and I had fun with it. If you watch the talk, I call it Simon, and it has an English accent and likes T-shirts. So anybody's watched American Idol, you know who I'm talking about. Because he's about the worst thing you have. The inner bully will tell us things we wouldn't tell our worst enemy. It's just really bad. And it, again, as you said, it doesn't go away, but you can sort of see it poking its head out. Then you go back and put it in a timeout. You can ask a question. And because if you don't silence that, if you don't come to terms with your inner voice, it's really hard to get that confidence up, right? Because that sort of comes from inside. It doesn't, either it comes from having done it before. If you look behind me, I've got 2 Ironman posters. So I've done Ironman triathlon. The first one's a whole other story, but I'd done one before. So I knew the second one I could do it. So you get your confidence by that. But if you never get out and tell your story, if you never go out and share that, then it's going to be harder and harder the longer you put it away. And there's limitless excuses of why you shouldn't do it that your subconscious will tell you. But the biggest thing I do is I find was that prove it. Show me some receipts of somewhere that I could not do something that I'm trying to do. And that usually silences it for a bit.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And it's all about redirecting that thought, right? Because we all have these negative thoughts. I think the statistic is about 80% or so of our thoughts a day are negative. 95% are repetitive. So we're repeating most of the time negative thoughts that we've had. So it kind of compounds. And guess what? This is for the average person. I like to emphasize that because for people that are battling like low self-confidence, that number has to be exemplified, right? But sharing our story can actually help other people. And the interesting thing is that can actually build confidence within us because, we're taking some of that story, right? And maybe it's from a place of adversity or obstacles or failure. But you know what? When we share it, it gives hope to someone else. And then when that happens, it's almost like a transference of energy in a way. And you can see that it actually helps that other person. So storytelling is like a glue that kind of binds people together, don't you think?
It makes connections, right? That's really what you're trying to do. And the fundamental thing you're talking about is your subconscious works, 24/7, 365. So even as you're going to sleep, if the last thought that you have is a negative thought, that thing's going to go on replay and your brain's going to binge watch it all night. Right. So that's one of the things I do is sort of have a gratitude journal. What went really well today? What am I grateful for that went on today? So I put right before I go to bed. So this puts me in a positive mindset that then hopefully the replay is something funny like Gilligan's Island or something. And it's not some, fear theory or something going on in there.
I like that. That's right. So that's a good way to kind of program your subconscious mind, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really important because I think, again, so many of our thoughts are these negative inner bully thoughts. And sometimes it's this inner bully, this voice is saying that, oh, that story's not special. Mm-hmm. oh, that's happened to so many people. That doesn't make you special. That doesn't make you different. Or what really did you accomplish there when other people have accomplished such bigger things, right? And it's these negative thoughts. But you know what I've found is that there's so many people that have maybe it's a similar element that you've had, but not the whole story. But maybe there's one part of your story they can really resonate with or relate to. And that just really helps, bind you to somebody else. And it creates that empathetic lens, and like you said, through gratitude, of course, I'm a huge believer in that. Gratitude really helps silence that inner bully as well, because, when we share our story and help somebody else, guess what? We're grateful. Yeah, we're grateful that we shared, and then we're grateful it helped them too.
Yeah, that's my whole goal. If I go out, even from this podcast we've got going on here, or anytime I get up on the stage, if I can help just one person, if one person gets what I'm doing, then I've met my goal. If the whole audience does, great. I've never seen that happen. I mean, I've had big audience stuff where most everybody does, but like my TED Talk, as soon as I got off the stage, the inner bully started coming in. Well, that stinks. I didn't play out like you had it in your head. I mean, I couldn't watch it for the first year, because I knew it didn't play in my head the way that the way I had it in my head, right? I had this different, a different director apparently in my head than what actually came out. But after that year, again, I gave myself some grace and I watched it, and it wasn't that bad. It was really pretty good. And to things off, as I'm sort of wallowing in my grief that I didn't deliver it 100% the way I had thought I had, is that a young gentleman came up to me after this, and I could see he had 3 or 4 different pages of notes that he had written. It had a diagram and all that, and he asked me some follow-up questions. So I know I had touched one person, and that totally sort of turned it around, that I'd reached my goal to do that. But, again, you going back to the story I told about how I realized that is I didn't think I had a special skill in storytelling. I just did it because I did it every day. Or, in co-writing the book, I looked at all these other people's co-author stories, and they overcame so much. I'm like, I still got into that. The bully came in, well, look what you did. You didn't have a leg fall off or anything like that. It's like, what are you to tell this story? But I've had people that have read it come up and said, that was spot on. It really helped. I've been there. I know what that is. So just wait, it'll happen. Anything that you've got to tell, there's somebody out there that it'll connect with, because the world's a very big place. But if you never get it out, you're not only cheating yourself, you're cheating the world of somebody that you may have helped.
That's the big regret. That's the big regret. We have to use our messages, our stories to help other people, right? And the only way we can do that is by telling it. So when I wrote my book, the inner bully always comes out, right? And like I told you before we started the show, even though I wrote the book on confidence, literally, hey, guess what? I still faced imposter syndrome. I still dealt with that inner bully, that negative self-talk. And me saying, is this really a great story? I don't know. Did I really overcome this much challenges or adversity or whatever? Do I want to share this? I mean, so much, right? Mm-hmm. But right after it was published, the amount of people that reached out to me that said, you wrote this book for me. Wow.
Yeah, that's the best compliment.
That was insane. And I never thought that my one particular story from my perspective would have really resonated like that with other people. But what I learned was you don't have to experience the exact same story, the exact same way, from the same perspective for other people to appreciate it. Because when a story is told through a lens of authenticity, almost anybody can relate to it. And that's the fascinating part.
Yeah, everybody's got something that is close. And as you're telling a story, I always like to when I talk to people about storytelling, I said the very first thing you need to do is understand where your audience is, what they live, what their day looks like, and stuff like that. So you can just sort of frame whatever your talk is. But in your case, there are people out there that it may not have been, well, definitely wasn't the same thing, because we're all unique. We got different molecules. We're all put here. And even though a similar story may have been told 1,000 times, you put your special sauce on it, and it hooks with that one person. It gets a lot closer. I can see myself doing that. I can see I've been there. And that's where you get that compliment like that. So again, that's where just because you're in the bullet saying, look, I've seen 1,000 of these stories. Yours is not that remarkable. What's the 1,001th time that is told that will impact somebody? So get out there and tell it.
That's so true. But it takes a lot of courage to do this, right? So, you're a good example of this, putting yourself out there. I'm sure it took a lot of courage for you to write your book, co-author your book. I'm sure it takes a lot of courage to step on stage. Doug, 75% or more of the population, their biggest fear is public speaking. Mm-hmm. So it's not easy to overcome. It's not easy to go on stage, face your biggest fears. Was that ever a fear for you? Or I know you were always a natural storyteller, but was like speaking in front of people something that you had to overcome in your life?
Until I did the TED Talk. No, I got on stage for the TED Talk. I actually have people tell me that exact same thing. And I'd been talking for so long in front of people, I'd forgotten it. But because of the TED Talk and some of the constraints that they had around it, one of them was they filmed it 2 days in a row and I had to do it the same way. And I've never done this talk the same way twice. Always try to sort of personalize it, learn something from it, make it a little bit better. But then the little 6-foot circle I had to stand in because the cameras and the lights were there. I'm a pacer. I like to get out. You'll find me in the back of the room sometimes doing things. I drive the sound people crazy. But I like to get in with the audience because there's a vibe that goes on there. So I felt like a caged lion having to pace around that. And a little funny thing, if you watch the video, I've got red shoes on. I have these red suede shoes on that are sort of my lucky speaker. Yeah, it looked like I didn't have any feet at sometimes. It looked like I was floating, hovering around the red circle because that's a little style choice I need to work on. But yeah, I don't necessarily have that fear, but the way to overcome it is, and I talk about in the TED Talk is, what's the worst that can happen if you're sitting talking to people? Nobody's going to shoot at you. Nobody's going to throw it, because we all have a little compassion because we're all sitting there saying, man, I don't want to do that. I would have wanted to get up there and do that. And so we make it a lot worse than what it would be. And if you do human things, you may think is you messed up or something like that. Again, it makes you human, and it makes people connect with you more because, because I watch some of these people that come off and they're like cold and they're mechanical, and it's just not. No, don't memorize. You need to be human, and it's that really human thing that people that sort of lack that confidence or that are afraid of big stages or even small stages that have that. But don't picture them naked. But you talk to your friends all the time, right? You tell your friends stories all the time. This is no different. Just make everybody your friend.
I like that. Yeah, find a friend or two in the audience you can connect with. Mm-hmm. And, maybe you have one over here, one on this side, one in the middle. And then, as you're talking, you just try to connect with that, one or two or three people. And then acknowledge and tell your brain that you have friends in the audience and you're just talking to friends. Mm-hmm. And that this is no different from a podcast or anything else that you're actually comfortable with. Because I think that little hypothalamus likes to turn on and, produce that cortisol and that fight or flight kicks in, right?
That's the key thing. You mentioned that, the fight or flight type thing. So the difference it's the same chemicals between fight or flight and excitement. So if you watch like an Olympic athlete, they're up there and they're going through the thing. They've got the exact same chemicals as somebody that's scared to get on the stage. It's how you use it and how you turn it over. Do I want to make this a positive type thing and harness that to, really bring it to bear? Or do I going to let me sort of shrink and do that because I'm fear? Again, ask you, what's the worst that can happen when I go do this? And that's, that sort of helps for me. That helps flip that switch, right? It helps me get in that. If I start falling in, Simon starts really ragging on me. I'll go, okay, I'll ask him to prove it. And two, I'll say, okay, I'll start turning the energy around to the positive type thing. I look into from the positivity. I'm going to use this for good.
Absolutely. And what if the best thing happens to you,
Exactly.
I mean, we're always so worried about, gosh, what if I trip? What if I fall? I feel like a lot of speakers who are women,
Yeah.
They're afraid to wear high heels because they're afraid they're going to fall. I'm like,
Yeah.
do you fall all the time, every day, always?
Yeah,
Why would that
exactly.
be any different, right?
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't wear them then if you're falling all the time. But but you probably wear it. I have two daughters and wife, and watch them. I said, hey, I could not do that. I would not be able to do that. But again, you're right. You come up with these worst case scenarios, and if you look back on your life when you thought about worst case scenarios, how many times did that actually play out?
Right.
Very rarely, if at all.
That's right. That's right. So it's not even worth having the mental real estate for. Just take all that nervous energy and focus into practicing and putting in the action, right?
Yeah. And the more times you do it, the easier it gets.
Yes.
But it never becomes something that, you never master it. You simply get where I know what's going to go on and I can manage it. So you expect it. And if you expect it to happen, it's like I used to tell them, I used to mentor at Team in Training, and we get and that's a charity for Lymphoma Society, but you get these people that were raising money for a loved one that had cancer, and they'd never done an endurance thing or something like that. But you watch over time what they do, get in that mindset because they got a different motivation. They go back and do that. And, they're back several times. So just repetition will help, getting out there, and it's going to be rough the first couple times. I call it embracing the suck, because sometimes it's going to. But just get out there and do it. Don't hold yourself back. You won't regret it. I promise you. Absolutely.
The only regret is not doing, right?
Yeah. And that's something you don't want to go to the grave with, is I wish I would have done that.
Exactly. That is so true. And practicing, like you said, just putting in the reps is so important, because, that's what cures a lack of confidence and doubt is action. It's really a magic pill for curing doubt. You just have to put in the action. And the more it's like working out. The more reps you put in, guess what? The larger your muscles grow, the more in shape you get. And over time, it's got that compound effect. So for me, something good that I'm doing right now, let me know what you think about this. I've got a 15-minute drive from my house to my gym. I start practicing my TED Talk, and I say it out loud. I probably look like a crazy lady talking to herself driving. I don't care.
We're singing along with the music. That's fine.
Yeah, that's right. But I start it right as I leave, and then it ends right as I get to the gym, and I time it, and it's building confidence within myself. Why? Because I'm putting in the reps, I'm putting in the action. It would not happen, and I would not, be as confident if I wasn't putting in that work. I think that's really important too.
Oh, it is. And again, doing the practice, even if it's yourself, you do build that confidence. I want to say hi to Jill, who was just on here. She's one of the co-authors of the book, by the way.
Oh, wonderful.
So wonderful. I've been connected with her for a long time. And but yeah, again, even if it's in front of a mirror doing these other things, it helps sort of build that confidence. Just know that the day of, the bully's going to be full speed ahead, and just say, hey, look, I've done these. Just quiet down. Go sit in the corner a little bit. I've done this 15, 20, 30 times. Going to the gym, I got this.
Yep.
Right. And then say, harness that energy. This is going to be great. I'm going to blow this out. So just harness it that way.
How long did it take you to prepare for the TED Talk? Because I know you when we talked about it, you said your first draft was like 38 minutes.
Yeah. I got a little verbose.
God bless you, Doug.
Yeah.
That took a while to refine, though, right?
Yeah, and as you refine it, it's like you're cutting out children as you go, because there's all little pieces that I want to get out. It took me, and literally, so I did something I would never do again, is I made a change based off some feedback, and it was a little bit of a flow thing about a week or so before. Just simply ordering some things around, because I could have ended on a down note if you watch it, about telling the story about, what story was he telling himself versus, you can go ahead and do this. But it took me, I'm a procrastinator. So I even though I'm thinking about it all the time, this is the way I do most of my presentations. I'm thinking about it. I'm sort of working out the story, and it's usually maybe even, a week or two before I start actually putting things on slides and getting a little bit more to it. I don't do notes. And again, mine is more with the slides I typically use. And this is another thing I would do better. I would use more slides. I used like 3 because I was listening to people tell me. That's another thing. You got to find your own style. if you try to imitate somebody else, it's just extra pressure and extra stress you don't need. Right. So I go in and I had to, again, these are all lessons that I've learned because I've fallen down, but I got out there and took in a bat. I learned that I didn't die. I'm still here talking to you. I didn't die, so it's important. But yeah, it took me a bit. Then I go through and I start putting some slides down, but they're usually pictures or word or something that is, for me, it's, okay, this is a pivot, but it has a ring that reinforces usually the thing I just talked about or what I'm about to talk about. And because I've got the talk track in my head, to you, I've done it to the gym 8,000 times, going on. And I like to take, like, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I was the last speaker, and we were talking, it was a technology type thing. And I was actually able to tie all the other things in front of me that sort of tied into my talk. And I was able to tie those things in. Now, this is an advanced skill. Don't try this on your first presentation, but it's all a style thing. But it did take a while. But again, like you, even when we recorded your podcast earlier for mine, you were like, obviously you were practicing it before we got on. So some people need a lot of that to feel that, build that confidence. And I think that's great. I think if you do that for a bit, then you can sort of, I can back off. I don't need quite that much. That's fine. But, just, it could take a long time. I've known people that's taken them the full 6 months to go ahead and do it. Right. But they had it done. The thing was done, but then they were just sort of refining and hitting and doing these other things. And you're in touch with your inner bully. You know what you need to be successful because you've done enough, and then you'll be fine. So just know what you need.
Absolutely. I'm an over preparer. So I require a lot of practice, lots and lots and lots of repetition. But you know what? You just have to know thyself, right? Mm-hmm. So it took me 3 months for my first draft, and then I changed it pretty much all, because I think we all go through that horror. Yeah. And then I refined it a lot, significantly, flipped it around, and now I'm at the point where it's memorized. I'm good to go. And then these next 2 or so months, just practicing every single day. But like you said, it's your flow and what works for you. I don't have slides. Mm-hmm. No slide.
Good for you.
I'm gonna try it.
You practiced enough. You've got this thing here to go do that. And I could probably do it without slides. It was just because a lot of times when I'm doing a presentation, I'm having a conversation with people. Mm-hmm. And and as you're looking at the audience, you talked about that earlier. It's always easy to find a few advocates. They're out there nodding and doing these other things. So even if you haven't talked to them, although I try to talk to people before I even get out there, is that I can sometimes I'll have a structure. So basically, here's the things that I'm going to cover. And the way I cover them will vary a little bit depending on how the audience is doing, events of the day that have come on that I can tie into it, sort of like I did earlier. So I don't have to, it's not really improv per se, because I've got it, but it is a natural flow. That's the way sort of I do things that way. I can't do a memorization thing like that. I know I can't do that. So I would not try to, for me to memorize, it was, memorize a couple opening lines is hard enough to go do that. Because I like to have this conversation, which I can't. If you put a teleprompter in front of me, it's really hard. I could not do the news.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, but that goes to show you we all have our strengths, but
exactly.
It's just leaning into those strengths, not trying to conform to somebody else, mm-hmm. how somebody else, it works for someone else, just listening to how it works for yourself. Yep. I'm getting anxiety just thinking about procrastinating, just.
I'm sorry I put stress on your day because there's somebody out there that procrastinates. But that's, our minds all sort of work a specific way. And like yours is very methodical and you need this preparation to do that, and it puts it at ease. Mine is, inside my brain is a very scary place and is very busy. For example, writing this book, so I had not probably written more than 200 words at one setting at any given time. And we're going through sort of this weekend course, a crash course to do it. And I've got this story that's been going in my head for a bit, because I've been thinking about it for a couple of weeks. And so it gets in, and that morning, the Sunday morning, we're supposed to turn that in. I wrote 3,400 words. I've never sat down and did it that long. And then I sort of tweaked a little bit with it. But that was a different experience, but I knew I couldn't do it until I was ready and had this story sort of gelled in my head to go do that. And I said, it scared Jill, I think, who was on. Oh my God, he's not going to be able to do anything. But yeah, you all have to find your own style. The worst I ever did at stage presenting is before I started Microsoft, they had a bunch of trainers coming. I was a trainer too. And they were doing this road show back in the day but they used to be system builders. They used to be at every corner, they build a PC out of scratch. So there's hundreds and hundreds of them at each location all over the country. And we were going around talking about some of the operating systems that came out. And so the guy that was leading is very odd because most technology people aren't very artistic when it comes to, you have a deep understanding of technology. You usually don't find them that also have flair. So this guy was a Broadway actor. So I was like, this is just not playing right in my head. But anyway, they had a guy in there, then I called him the professor. He had the sport coat on with the elbow patches, the belt patches, and very reserved when he did things, right? Very, not monotone, but just very reserved. And I like that style. And so I tried to imitate it. And you can imagine, I was failing miserably all week. I called my wife on the last day. I said, look, the inner bully's kicking in. I don't belong here. I'm struggling. I'm not having any fun. I stink. And she gave me the best advice is, look, you've been you for 35 years. That's all you can be. Why are you trying to be somebody else? So I said, okay, fine. So I went out the next day again without a lot of preparation. I was just myself. Did what I needed to do in my style. And I got a call from the guy at Rand and says, you were the best one there. I was waiting for that person to show up all week, because I was trying to be somebody else. So get in touch with what your style is. Okay, you can appreciate others, incorporate what works, discard what doesn't. Don't feel bad about it because it's not you. We're all unique. We're all unique individuals, and we all sort of work in a unique way. So, and again, don't listen to the inner bully. You got to be like this guy. Oh no, I was miserable when I was that guy. So it's like, just go in and listen to that voice. And again, the more you do it, if you never get out there and do it, it's like a triathlon. If you don't get out the door and do the training, an Ironman is 140.2 miles of exercise. It'll be 16 hours and change the first time and about 15 something the next time. So, but getting up there and doing all the work, showing up every day, doing even just a little bit, helped me get to that starting line and let me know that I could finish. So you guys got Ironman in you. I know it. You just get out there, pitch it in, go ahead and do it. Or like you started, you got it formulated, and you reached to a point where, okay, this is as good as I'm going to get that. Now I'm going to work on executing it, right? And that's what you've been working on for the last little bit. And that works for you.
Absolutely. That is such great advice. I would love, to leave the audience, with one actionable thing. One action tip maybe, Doug, that, can help somebody start to have that confidence maybe to share their story, that they can have that one takeaway after this podcast, if you can think of anything.
Sure. Start writing something down, right? Just start writing it down where you'll share it only with yourself, or pick up your phone or whatever, record you telling this story. And it may be with just yourself, but you've gotten it out. You've proven that you can tell that story and work on that. Then think about sharing it with one other person, your best friend, whoever, group of friends. That's the way it's crawl, walk, run. But if you never get it out, even again, if it's just to you, I'll do this today. I'll sort of, hey, I've got an idea. Let me record it, and I'll play it back to sort of see how it looks. But I get it out, right? And sometimes I change it, sometimes I don't. But that's it. Just take that first step. Just take that first step, and you won't regret it.
Yep. So doing a short little video, writing it down, even better. And then, if you want to share it with a friend, somebody close to you, a family member, a spouse, and then maybe share it to a larger audience. I like that. Crawl, walk, run. Because storytelling, there's an art form to it, but it doesn't take a genius to master. I think most people have it in them. But it starts with just taking that one step in the right direction and just writing it down and memorializing it and then sharing it with just one person. I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Doug.
Yeah. Our brains are wired to learn from stories. Think about the cavemen. Even before we had a language, they painted pictures on the wall, which was basically a story. Buford over there got stepped on by a dinosaur. Don't do that. We all got those in there.
I like the name Buford for a caveman. That's a first. I love that. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Doug, for coming to the show today and for sharing a little bit about why we should tell stories and how we can do so with confidence. But I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you for everyone who tuned in, and we will catch you on the next episode. Take care. And that's a wrap for this episode of Grasp Confidence. Thank you for joining me today and investing in yourself. Remember, building confidence is an ongoing journey, and each step you take brings you closer to the empowered, fearless version of yourself that you were born to be. Don't forget to visit my website, follow me on social media, and purchase my book, which is available on Amazon. Thank you for listening. We will see you on the next episode. Stay confident.